morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. John Salati.
Good morning, Mr. Phillips. Great to be back.
Glad to see you. Dr. Cheney.
Morning.
Good morning. Glad to see you. And we have a very special guest with us today, and I'm going to introduce her in a minute. But before I do that, I want to talk about what do we do here, the Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. And that's what we do. We have stories of instances of injustice and we tackle it. One of the things I'm noticing, and I've said it before, is that the biggest display of injustice seems to be happening from those who are put in a position to protect justice, to ensure justice, and to make sure justice is carried out. The very people who are in charge of protecting citizens are the ones hurting them. And that's the biggest injustice of them all. And the show that we have today is a prime example of that. And it gets under my skin because we go to these people to get help. And when we go to them to get help, we get less than. In other words, we get worse, almost worse than what had happened to us. And so we're going to call them out today. This show, and I'll tell the producer to make sure that he addresses politicians. Make sure that every state politician sees this show today. Because change has to happen. And why is it like that? Let me bring up the chalkboard. There's this word, and I believe I brought it up before. Sovereign immunity. Let me enlargen this. Sovereign immunity is part of the reason why we see this type of injustice. Do I not have, oh no, I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on. There we go. Sovereign immunity. Well, what is that? Literally, it's the idea, or the fact rather, that the government cannot be sued. Look at this. Without its consent. And when you say the government, what does that mean? It means anybody who works for the state or the government. Police officers, public school teachers, state's attorneys, politicians, presidents. Sovereign immunity says that they cannot be sued unless they say, hey, okay, sue me. Who would ever say that? Who would ever consent to being sued? Did I have, sued. And this idea comes from the time when America was part of England. And it literally means the king can do no wrong. Officials can do no wrong is the idea. So whatever they do, deal with it. It's not wrong. And so you have these people who have this absolute power and they are absolutely corrupt. And what can you do? The story that we have today is a perfect example. And I'd like to welcome Mindy Corbett. Good morning, Ms. Corbett.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being on. And I know this is a difficult situation for you to be in. And for those who are watching, I really want you to pay attention to what is literally taking place as Mindy speaks. So let's go all the way from the beginning, Mindy. Where are you living right now?
I live in Walterboro, South Carolina.
Okay. And the incident took place with your child.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that. How old was she when this first started happening?
9.
Okay, and what happened?
She was molested by one of my relatives from the age of 9 to 13.
Okay,
And
tell us how this came about. We know what happened, but how did you know this?
Well, her behavior changed, of course. There's always changes in behavior when abuse is taking place. And then there were also, I not really broken because it's a phone I pay for, but went through her phone and found a bunch of text messages that were
How old was she when you went through her phone?
13.
13. Okay, so you go through her phone because you're noticing some changes in her behavior. And I'm imagining you think might be something at school, or what are you thinking that is causing these changes?
Maybe she's hanging out with the wrong friend group. Maybe she's experimenting with stuff. I don't know. I'm just like, what's happening, to my child? And some of the messages that I saw were extremely, they were very disgusting, and it was heartbreaking to see it because it was coming from someone that I thought I could trust, someone that I had trusted with my child.
Who was that someone?
It was my uncle.
So you read text messages from your uncle to your daughter?
Yes, so it'd be her great uncle.
Wow. And these text messages, I'm assuming they were sexual in nature?
Some of them. So whenever you first start, so I don't want to go into like the actual details of it, just because the case is still pending and I don't want to say anything that can be used or interfere with the case.
Right.
But in the beginning, because she had 2 phones, so we went into both phones, and then both phones were turned over to SLED. But in the beginning,
What's SLED?
so SLED's like the law enforcement agency in South Carolina, one of them that they use.
Okay.
And so whenever I submitted both the phones there. And so when they first started, it was very much more so in the very beginning, grooming, gaining that child's trust and kind of going through that. And in South Carolina, we don't really have grooming laws.
Okay.
To protect children. So a bunch of very inappropriate stuff,
and
daily text.
When you say grooming, it's just like basic talking, making the person comfortable.
Hello, beautiful. Hello, my number one. You're my favorite. You can always trust me.
Okay.
I've got your back.
Okay. All right. So these are things that your uncle is texting a 9-10-year-old.
Yes.
All right. And so what happens?
So I read the messages, and when I first saw them, it was very, very disheartening. I took my kids I was at work. I got sick to my stomach. I felt like there's probably steam coming out of my ears, like a cartoon character. And I went to my mom. It's my mother's sister's husband. So it's my mom's brother-in-law. And, I'm like, I'm drawing a line. Like, this is done. We're going to law enforcement. This is enough is enough.
Okay. And so you go to law enforcement, and now your daughter's how old?
She is 16 and she will be 17 in January.
No, I mean, when you went to law enforcement, how old was she?
She was 13.
She was 13. Okay. And then what does law enforcement do?
So they arrest him.
Okay. So they have enough evidence.
Yes. They do an investigation. Well, she has a forensic interview because, she's a child. So, of course, they do a forensic interview with, Hopeful Horizons is where they do all of their forensic interviews here. And they do a forensic interview. They take the phones, they collect all of their evidence. I felt like it takes forever for him to get arrested. But, I get that they have to get their ducks in a row first.
Right.
So they collect all the evidence that they need so that they can build a case, and then they arrest him.
Okay. And so he's arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But then what happens?
He hired a state senator to represent him.
What's so wrong with that?
In South Carolina, so state senators back in 2017 were granted Senate protection where they couldn't go to trials like between January to July. You couldn't have court hearings. So it kind of prolonged going to court, but they could go to hearings after July. And then in 2021, August 4th, Donald Beatty, which is the Chief Justice for the Supreme Court in South Carolina, issued an absolute protection order if you were on certain committees, and his attorney is on a redistricting committee. So therefore, she does not have to go to court, cannot be compelled to go to court for the entirety to that she's on that committee. So we don't go to trial.
So, all right, so I want everyone to fully understand this. The guy who was arrested, your uncle, for molesting your daughter,
Mhm.
was he bonded? Is he still in prison?
No, he was bonded out.
He was bonded out, so he's a
Mhm.
free man now.
Yes.
He hires this attorney who's on the committee,
Mhm.
and because he has this attorney who's on the committee, that attorney, all of her cases cannot go to trial.
Yes.
So he's out
Mhm.
as a free man, avoiding any sort of prosecution.
Yes.
And how long has this been for?
So the original charge was in 2018, and what they got at that time was the contributing to delinquency of the minor, and then 4 other charges came in 2019. And so for all 5 charges, it's been 2.5 years.
With no end
3
in
years
sight.
with the first.
With no end in sight.
No.
And then-
So I called, so when COVID happened, of course, court stopped, right? We
Right.
weren't doing courts, COVID was there, understandable. As soon as they started doing trials again, I contacted the 14th Circuit, which is who has our case, and asked them, when are we going to trial? Because, you know, what you tell your child is, we're gonna go to court, we're gonna get justice, you know, he's gonna be on a registry, he's going to go to jail, you know, we're gonna get justice for you. And so I call and I'm like, when are we going to trial? And what I was told was that we were prepared to go to trial. However, since he was represented by a lawyer legislator, and with the new order that had come down from the Supreme Court, those trials could not be scheduled.
Who's the attorney that's representing him?
Margie Bright Matthews.
And she is a state senator.
Yes.
All right, let me bring her up really quickly because I want people to see who we're talking about. Why doesn't she just recuse herself?
I have no idea.
So this is Margie Bright Matthews. She's a state senator in South Carolina.
Yes.
She's representing someone who has been charged. We can't say convicted yet because he hasn't had his trial, but he's been charged. Do you know what his charges are against your daughter?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
Contributing to the delinquency of a minor, criminal sexual conduct with a minor in the 3rd degree, assault and battery, 2nd degree, sexual exploitation of a minor, 1st degree, and dissemination of obscene material to a minor.
So he has all of these charges, and this attorney is do you know how much he paid her?
I have no idea an exact dollar amount. I heard that he went into his 401k. I was given a rough figure, but I don't even know if that's true. So I feel like even to say it, it wouldn't necessarily be factual.
Okay, that's fine. So you don't exactly know right now, but because he retained her, he's essentially free
Yes.
and with no end in sight. Now, there was a story that was done in South Carolina, correct?
Yes. Whenever I found out that we weren't going to trial, I was very, very angry. So I contacted the Senate Ethics Department, and I also contacted media and went to Live 5 News, which is a local news station out of Charleston, and contacted them.
All right, let's listen to the beginning of this.
Imagine this. Someone is accused of committing a serious crime against you. They get out on bond, and you wait for them to be put on trial.
But that's a trial that won't be happening anytime soon because the suspect hired a state lawmaker to act as their defense attorney.
This is happening right now in courtrooms all across our state because of an order from the Chief Justice known as absolute protection. Katie Kamen explains why that is and how it's impacting justice.
All of it has just been extremely
overwhelming, and it very much feels like not fair.
Mindy Corbett is a Colleton County mom. More than 3 years ago, she says she saw some text messages between her daughter and a relative and quickly realized something wasn't right.
Looking at some of the messages, I threw up, like I was sick to my stomach.
Corbett says she learned that relative, Michael Ramsey, was sexually abusing her daughter, so they went to Walterboro Police. Ramsey was charged with multiple crimes, including first-degree sexual exploitation of a minor.
We trust in our justice system. We trust in the legal system. So we do what's right. We call the cops. We file a report. And the cops did their job.
Ramsey bonded out of...
So whatever happened with that news, that article came out, that news piece came out. Did anything happen from that?
No, not really. Well, I do know that the Attorney General's office had contacted the 14th Circuit regarding another case. And I believe that, I think that the, assistant solicitor and the solicitors here, I feel that they're frustrated. They have a lot of cases. It's multiple. It's not just my daughter's. There's multiple cases on the books that they can't take to trial. And what do you say to these
and they're all of this nature.
Yes. And so they, when the AG's office called them about another case, they asked them to take a look at this one. And the Attorney General's office has taken over the case at this time. And it's almost like we're starting all over because they have to collect their evidence, right? They have to do their due diligence, which I understand. I get that completely. Like they're not going to go to trial with something that they haven't seen for themselves and are, going to be able to do. But it's like we're now where we were ready to go to court with the 14th Circuit. And the only thing that was stopping us was this absolute protection order from the Supreme Court. Now the Attorney General's office has the case, and we're now not prepared to go to court because they're doing motions for discovery and trying to collect all the evidence from the Walterboro Police Department.
Dr. Cheney, I'm going to let you jump in, and then John, I want to get to you in a second. Dr. Cheney.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay. You talked about behavior changes and that kind of thing with your daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you share with us, can you share with us maybe 3 behavioral changes that you saw that you could, if you were, let's call them behavior alerts that you may have noticed that spurred you on?
Anytime I would go and look at her phone, but I feel like this kind of happens with any teenager. They, want to take it. They don't want you in their business. It's their personal business. And she started self-harming. So, whenever the cutting started and that self-harm and stuff started, it was like, obviously something's not right because a kid that's happy and good, isn't going to necessarily do that. And she also, she withdrew. She was extremely depressed. She wasn't singing. She loves to sing in church and, sing her heart out. She does chorus and stuff. She wasn't singing as much, wasn't involved in as much stuff with her friends. And, she also had a suicide attempt.
Yeah, sorry about that. Now, with this uncle, how did he get?
And also quickly, just to note, Amanda, you're in that field, right? You're a psych nurse.
I am. I'm a psychiatric nurse.
Okay, so you might be more keen to these type of things where other mothers, they may not know, but it's a good thing that you were able to pinpoint these things and know something definitely was wrong.
Yeah, we have been in, we do therapy, counseling. That is a part of our everyday lives. And even though the abuse has stopped, the after effects of everything, they don't stop. And she's continuously being re-victimized by the system, right? So it's definitely been hard. I mean, at this point, I feel like she's going to be in her 20s before we ever go to court.
Go ahead, Dr. Cheney.
How did he get close to you all? Do you see this person? Did you all see this person on a regular family?
We
interaction?
actually did not. my mom had an argument with her sister when I was younger, and they stopped coming around. And my grandmother lived with us. And whenever hospice gets called in, family come out of the woodworks at that time. So I'm sorry, the clock's dinging. So hospice got called in, and family started coming around at that time, and he met my daughter at that time, and that's when she was 9.
Okay, I have another timeline question. Tell us some key points how you became an advocate in your fight for justice for your daughter, and
So
connected with the South Carolina lawyer legislators. Just tell us how it started, pretty much. You've done that, but maybe some key factors that you may have not shared.
So as whenever everything, first happened, and I got wind that he had hired, a state senator to be his attorney, that angered me a lot. I was like, what does it take to be a senator? Support pedophilia, and kind of just went, upset, angry, of course. And then I'm like, we're just now really speaking out and kind of sharing the story about it, because again, we thought we were going to be going to court. We thought we were going to get justice. I didn't realize, I knew about the Senate protection from January to July, because like when we were doing our preliminary trial, it was put off, I don't know how many times. I took off work, all of that, and then finally went to trial. But whenever I called and they said that we weren't even scheduling a court case because of who his attorney was, I was extremely kind of irate at that time. And I'm like, this just isn't right. And then a bunch of other people had reached out to me whose families have been victim of crimes as well. And they are also represented by the same state senator. And they can't go to court either.
And the last quick question I have, tell us about your media journey. How you got involved with the media, you told us a little bit, but some key points.
I called Live 5.
Yeah,
I called Live 5 News, and of course they have like a tip line, and I'm a pretty persistent person. So I called consistently, and I was like, listen, I have this story. Does no one want to talk about how South Carolina state senators are, protecting pedophiles at this point? And they're like, what? And then at that point we moved forward, and they asked me if I'd be willing to go on camera. And when I first spoke with them, I told them I had to speak with my daughter first, because it's also, she has to be willing to let all of this, this is her story. And we sat down together, and then we also spoke with her therapist, because I wanted to make sure that doing this wasn't going to jeopardize her mental health any further, not just be my opinion as a mom and, have that opinion. So they felt that, going to the media and kind of shining a light on it, Abby will at least feel that something is being done. Something's being done, someone's doing something, someone has her back, her life has meaning, at some point, that someone actually cares.
Even though I just had 3 questions, but something you just said that makes me ask this question, but it's up to you to answer. How does your daughter feel when you were initially doing exploration to find out the behavior? You eventually went to her, correct? And you said, hey, what's going on?
She's never, she knows that I know, but I have not been the person, she has not confided in me details and specifics. I know, and I don't know all of the details that she shared. Hopefully that's evidence that will, go into court. I know the gist of what happened. And, when she gets angry and upset, there'll be outbursts. And then there's also a lot of, I had open heart surgery, and my parents were with me, and my aunt kept my children when Abby was 10, and he was there. And she's like, you left me with him. And I'm like, I had no idea. I had no idea. Do you think if I knew I'd have left you? Like, I didn't know. So,
Did you ever approach him?
I'm sorry.
I know, sorry. Did you ever approach him?
I did when before I got into the gist of the messages and just saw like the heavy deep ones, they got worse the further you kind of delved in. But whenever I first noticed them, I did say something to him, and I spoke with my aunt also, and told her, and I was like, this is your husband. I'm going to come to you woman to woman. Like, and his response to me was, half the time when I'm texting her, I'm watching TV and I don't even know what I'm saying.
And the last part that I want to ask, you say children. You have more than one child that might have been exposed to this? Not necessarily violated, but
I have a
exposed.
son. I don't know, I don't believe that he was abused or anything like that, but of course it affects him
Yeah.
because he's in our house. So we are also part of BACA, which is the Bikers Against Child Abuse.
Oh, good.
And both of the children, are in BACA. So we work through that, and BACA's been amazing for her. She definitely does not let anyone say anything to her anymore. She very much stands up for herself at this point. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we gotta dial it back just a tad, not use so much profanity, bring it back
That's
down.
good.
But she'll definitely, she does not live in fear anymore.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do you think that it's a plan that some of these charged criminals have to retain these attorneys, knowing that if they retain them, they're going to avoid jail time?
I feel that they do because they seem to. It's like it's almost, from what I was told, from other, with BACA and speaking with the assistant solicitors and stuff, this state senator seems to represent all of the cases that BACA has in this county. So it's almost like if you're a pedophile or if you're a murderer, there's like some black web and you can like type in something and I guess it says call her. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm not a criminal, so I guess I wouldn't know that. But
Are there
it
any
seems to know to
other,
contact her.
are there any other attorneys in South Carolina who's stepping up to say, hey, we're going to do something?
No.
I'm seeing that this lady is born and raised South Carolinian. She
In Walterboro, yes.
Yeah, Walterboro. She went to school in South Carolina. She's been there all her life. So I'm assuming she's well respected.
She is.
You think maybe attorneys are fearful that, is it a small county to where, because some attorneys, they're blackballed by judges, whatever they come with, they're going to lose?
I don't know that it's necessarily even her versus the system as a whole in South Carolina. If you look at the amount of lawyer legislators, which they had showed on Live 5 News, that, are also criminal defense attorneys. These are people who are supposed to be making our laws, but yet they're also defending the criminals that break our laws. And they're also the ones who are, electing and voting in your judges and your, chief justices of the Supreme Court. Like that's how that works in the state. So I feel like there's just that power that happens either way. And I personally, I don't know that it means anything to anyone else, but I just don't feel that you should have that much power and be able to actually even have a fair trial to begin with.
Yeah.
Whenever you're the one who voted maybe that judge in.
Right.
Because y'all had dinner together the night before.
Yeah, I definitely
and
see
you grew
that.
up together and y'all known each other for 50 years, 40 years, whatever,
Yeah, I definitely see that. But for this particular woman, if I'm an attorney and I'm on this board and a charged criminal comes to me to represent them, I'm going to decline because I know that if I represent them, they're not going to have a trial. It seems like just the right thing to do.
But whenever you can pocket a bunch of money to be retained and all you do is file paperwork for continuances and you don't really go to trial, it's kind of a sweet job.
Yeah.
Right? Right.
It's sweet for
I'll be your attorney, it's going to cost you this much to retain me as you go bankrupt and retain them. And then, it's
Yeah, I
just
mean,
paperwork. It's paper
sweet.
pushing at that point.
It's sweet for a corrupt person. I mean, who would do that? John, I'm gonna let you jump in. I know you have some questions you wanted to ask her.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail right there. I mean, there is a huge injustice going on. The whole idea that simply by a person's office, an office of public trust, I don't have a problem with the thought that, okay, there are attorneys in the legislature. That's a good thing by and large, even criminal defense attorneys. But when you seem to have created a system where you can now shield people from being held accountable, now we've taken a step too far. That is a huge injustice. And I have huge sympathy for you, Ms. Corbett, and your daughter and your whole family for having to deal with this. I do want to also, a little shout out for Walterboro. I had a family in Bamberg, and so used to have to travel through Walterboro on a regular basis not that long ago. So I know your part of the world at least a little bit. But again, this here,
You had said something about a civil suit.
well, I mean, there's that question. That the thought had occurred to me, you're stymied on the criminal side. The way South Carolina, I have to say, legislators have set up this with the courts that, yeah, we have this little shell game we can play. And I guess there isn't a speedy right to trial for victims.
No, because it
And
protects
the
criminals.
Sixth, right, the Sixth Amendment protects the criminals, but if the criminal is part of staying away from the trial, I guess that doesn't implicate any Sixth Amendment issues. So does that open the door? Well, not so much open the door. Is the option of a civil suit against your uncle something you've considered?
It wasn't anything I ever considered. It's definitely, I'm open to any options as far as getting justice for my daughter in any way, shape, or form. When all of this first happened, that's not really something that crossed my mind. I just wanted him in jail.
So what about now?
I mean, absolutely. I want my daughter to feel that there's something, and I don't feel that he should be out there buying boats, our new houses,
Right.
or living his life to the fullest. And, we're over here counseling once a week, doing everything we can do, trying to rebuild our life. But it's also really hard to move forward when you're stuck because we can't, as far as like getting justice for anything.
Right.
It's like, so this is okay. This is what's allowed to happen. And I mean, I also feel like if you just look at, our society as a whole, and especially here in South Carolina and in this county, the amount of cases that can't go to trial that involve child abuse. What are you teaching those children? Like, you're teaching them that it's okay to do these things because you don't actually have to be held accountable, because no one's really held accountable, apparently. Here, they just get away with whatever they want to do, whether it's, murdering someone or sexually abusing children. They can hire a state senator, and it is what it is.
But the option of starting a civil suit is still there. You could go sue this guy for $100-200 million.
Yes.
Okay. John, you was saying something.
Not a simple thing to do. Let's just say that for any one of a variety of reasons. I don't hold that out as an easy, oh, why haven't you done this? Isn't that obvious? I want to make that clear. A civil suit would be not a complicated thing to get into. It just crossed my mind as well. If this avenue of justice is at least temporarily blocked, perhaps there's another way to at least kind of crack the whip a little bit, which would possibly also raise the profile of this matter, which would then shed light on the problem you're facing, that this internal state governmental issue of allowing legislators to become legal representatives of people who they know perfectly well based on how things are set up, they can duck ever having to be accountable. So that's been.
And in addition to that, John, I'm thinking that one, it could preserve evidence, right? Because as soon as the civil case starts, whatever evidence, if and when this criminal case comes up, you would have preserved that evidence as to where now we don't know when it's going to happen 5 years down the line, then the evidence is gone. That's one. And two, I wouldn't see why she couldn't try to sue the system for obstructing justice. Now, of course, we have that sovereign immunity thing that's there, but it would at least do something, right? It would say, look, we want to go after this guy for the criminal charges, but for this system, we cannot. Now, you sue the Supreme Court judge, he's going to get by through the sovereign immunity. But at least people would say, look, we're the ones responsible for these innocent people hurting while the criminals that did it are free, right? It would at least be something. Go ahead, John.
Well, that's an interesting, take on the whole matter. But if nothing else, such an action would keep light on this in ways that, yes, it's all too easy now. A year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by. Now 4 years have gone by, and it starts to fade for everybody, but of course you and your daughter and the rest of your family. So it would keep a light on that. And as Salon has talked about, preserving evidence. Of course, civil case, you could do depositions. So you'd always have that information that would be preserved. There would be that. But it's, talk about a tragedy. I don't know if that's the right.
And if now we're not licensed in South Carolina, but if there are any attorneys watching this show that are, email the show. I can get in touch with Mindy, and we need to do something. Because right now, this guy, is he still in South Carolina?
Yes. Yes. He's
And
still
then-
in this town.
Is he allowed to leave? I'm assuming that. he's
So apparently he is, for work, because I think he's been at some point up in Maryland working.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, see, and
Still, he lives here, but he does travel for work. And they have allowed him to go out of state for work.
yeah, I think a civil suit on his behind parts would do some good. We're going to dissect this a little bit more, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. We're going to do everything that we can to help you on our end, make some calls, and see what sort of justice could come for you and your daughter, because unmute yourself. I see you. Just
I'm good.
no,
Oh.
Dr. Cheney is.
Dr. Cheney, there you go.
All right. The question that I have before you go, is the guy still part of the family in the sense that he is still visible at certain events?
No.
Okay.
So there's a very clear line that is drawn. There is no relationship on that side of the family or anyone who stood by him.
Okay.
Is he still married to?
Yes, he is.
And she's supporting him, I'm assuming.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Wow. All right. Again, thank you so much for coming
You've
on.
done a great job with this, Ms. Corbett. I mean, as much as one could do in such a terrible situation, you sound like you've really handled this as well as one could. So.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's definitely been a struggle at times.
Yeah.
We're with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you. We'll keep in touch.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
All righty.
Bye. It was great meeting y'all.
You
Thank
too.
you. Bye-bye. Wow. once again, people who we think are in place to help us. I'm having a hard time with the senator woman. I'm sorry. And I know it's political. And I know if this gets to some other politicians, they're going to say, oh, but I got to put her up here again. I'm sorry.
I'd be interested in finding out if such a situation exists in any other state. This sounds like a very unusual situation that they've created there in South Carolina. And it is absolutely, even if one could come up with reasonable intentions, it is ripe for abuse. And there should at least be ways to countermand this. You know, yeah, you're an attorney, you have a right to make a living, blah, blah, blah. But at a certain point,
But she's not practicing.
well,
She's taking these cases on and then they're just sitting there.
and that's the point. At a certain point, you know, let's say under the bar rules, no, you have to let this go. You know, we'll give you a certain amount of leeway. Okay, somebody comes to you in November and you pick up a client and now you're in session for the legislature. Okay, fine, you don't have to. But at a certain point in this process, if you cannot take a case to trial because of your responsibilities as a senator, and you're going to hide behind them, because I have to presume nothing prevents her from taking this to trial. The judge has set up an order that allows them, the senators, not to go to trial. But my recollection of this is the judge is enforcing them.
Right.
Oh, no, you cannot take a case to trial. No, we're setting up a situation to protect you from having to do that.
Right.
So either you,
So it's
at a
all on
certain
her.
point,
It's
right,
all
at a
on
certain
her.
point in time, you either take this case to trial or you let this client go. You know, in the interest of the larger instances of justice, you have to let that client go. And if that means giving back the retainer or some portion of it, so be it.
Right.
But but again, it comes, as you were saying before, Salon, a form of obstruction of justice.
Right. That I would love to ask her, why don't you withdraw yourself from this case? Why didn't you do that on day one?
And when did you decide to make it a practice to represent abusers and pedophiles?
Right. And then not move forward with the case.
Yeah, as Corbett saying, every BACA-related victim is connected to this senator.
And I'm wondering, because sometimes these people, and I don't want to, I don't want to discriminate against people who are pedophiles, but isn't that repetitive? Isn't that like a disease?
Well, all right, you could say that the person still, you know, the problem here is, of course, we're getting into the issues of, well, nobody's been convicted yet, and they're not necessarily been labeled sex offenders. So, yeah, we want to be hesitant about that. An accusation has been made.
Right, and you have enough evidence. So if it is true, the possibility of this person, now that he's out and he's free, doing it again
is there, yes, that's true.
And so now someone else gets mentally, sexually damaged because of the senator is refusing to move forward with the case or to withdraw herself.
And I wonder if that would open her up to liability.
It has to.
Well, this is South Carolina. I wouldn't say it has to, but it raises the question that you're representing somebody who's been accused of child abuse. There is a significant amount of evidence on the table. You shield this person from going to trial for a number of years. In the midst of this, this person then abuses again. Could that second person now file suit against the senator saying, you've in a sense facilitated this? I don't even know what The
Yeah,
charge would be
I don't know, but something was
gross negligence. I mean, you know,
something, right?
you
And-
knew or should have known.
And this is what we do. We have no problem suing people in their official capacity, even though it may not go anywhere, just to raise awareness. Because sometimes people, when they're doing wrong, when no one is talking about it, they don't even realize it's wrong. You have to shine a light on it. And then they say, oh, wow, I can't believe I was doing that.
It's really breaking the
You do. Go ahead, Dr. Cheney.
law. Based on what I reviewed, she's following the law. And she's one of a member of a law firm. And then the question that I would have, how did she get selected? Did the law firm push her over to work with this guy? How did she get selected? The judge ruled that this is the way they're supposed to interact with clients, right? Yes, he did. You know, there was a judge's order, and
Yeah.
she's following the judge's order. And the question that I have, she's not the first person, and she's not the only person, correct?
Yeah, I think she did mention this. There's others who are doing the same thing. And this is why I say we have a system. We have a system, and a lot of times the system there is flawed, right? But just because the system is flawed does not mean the person has to exploit it. They have this system in South Carolina now where if you're an elected official and you're an attorney, all your cases, you don't have to proceed with them and they get stayed. That's a flaw, clearly. But if you are some moral individual, you wouldn't carry that out. So even though the system itself might be flawed, the rational human being could say, I'm not going to take this case because I'll have a charged criminal not being moved to justice or not. Maybe he is not guilty. We won't know because he's retained me. So I'm not going to put myself in that position. But when you have a corrupt individual, now they exploit the corrupt law and you have injustice.
We can't really call her corrupt, though, can you?
Why not? She is knowingly taking on clients who she's not representing and letting them stay either unconvicted or not. Maybe they're innocent.
But isn't this is what the judge is saying that has to be done?
What was that?
The judge made an order, right?
No, like John said, the judge put the order there, but it's not saying you cannot move forward with the case. It's just there that if your plate might be so full that we're going to set this law in place that says you don't have to. But she's not like an innocent victim in this. So she's an attorney and she's on this board. She's getting case. She's having to retain these people have to come to her and she has to accept the cases. No, she has choices.
Well, there was an attorney involved in speaking out, explaining this process. I can't recall all of it, but the process was explained and the value of having them involved. I just don't know if she's the only person that's doing this.
Well,
Yeah,
but again, that's not the point.
Child.
You know, there's nothing wrong with attorney legislators. There's nothing wrong with criminal defense attorneys being legislators. The judge has created a situation to try to protect legislators' time when they're serving as legislators. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But there comes a point where these legislators, and this is the only one we have specific information on, who are abusing the system. And I want to note, one, she doesn't work for a law firm. She's a solo practitioner. So she's not like in some big law firm and how did they pick her? No, somebody is coming to her. She represents people on her own. That's the other thing. The other interesting tidbit, she became a legislator 6 years ago after that the pastor of the church in Charleston was killed.
Clementa.
It was the
Pinckney.
massacre, Clementa Pinckney. He was the legislator, and she became the legislator who succeeded him after his death. And so to go from somebody of that upstanding nature to a situation where we have somebody who is using, seemingly using her position to protect people from being accountable. Again, I'm not saying he's guilty at this point. I'm
Right.
saying he needs to be held accountable by having the trial. I would love it if we extend an invitation to her to say, well, this has come before us. We'd like to hear your side of things. Maybe there's something about this that we don't see because all we have is one news article that came out, on television and some other information. But it certainly raises questions here, and we'd love to hear what you have to say about them.
And I'm going to send a message to her. We have her number. Get her on the show, because right now I'm not happy with that. And maybe she could say something that would help us all to understand. It just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe we could even have, I don't want the guy on the show, because I think she has enough evidence to suggest that something went wrong. If he told her, well, every time I was texting her, I was watching TV. What are you texting a 10-year-old for anyway?
And what do you mean you don't know what you're saying? Really? And then, of course, that was only the things that he said early on. Clearly, what Ms. Corbett is saying, that there were other things after that that were much more, I guess, damning. I doubt, given some of the things that she said early on, would have prompted police to arrest him. They wouldn't have been good. But, saying whatever, you're my favorite or this or that is not likely to get you arrested for that laundry list of charges that she went through.
Right. It had to be more than that.
He clearly went beyond that. So whatever he, was fudging around, well, I didn't know what I was saying, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay.
They have to give it to his wife. She's sticking by his side.
Well, that's classic. Right, how often an abuser's spouse protects them. That is a classic situation.
Dr. Cheney, unmute yourself. Was there any other questions that you wanted to ask that you didn't get a chance to ask her?
Not really.
Okay.
You asked all, so
All righty. And
I didn't
again, I think that these individuals, they are fearless because of the sovereign immunity.
Mm.
They know they're untouchable. So they feel free in doing whatever it is they want to do, because after all, what are you going to do? It's sickening. All righty, you all.
I suspect the bar rules probably don't have anything to say about any of it. You would think if there would be some place that there would be some kind of ethical responsibility question, it would be in the bar rules. And I have to presume the South Carolina bar rules say nothing that impact on this at all. Which again, I understand, these are written by legislators or lawyers, and I guess we're protecting ourselves a little bit much in this situation. But the bar is allowing this too. So there's an injustice at the bar, there's an injustice in the judicial process, there's an injustice at the level of the legislature. All these things, as you know, Salon, this show continually comes back to saying, these are things that are supposed to be protecting people. And in this instance, they all have three different institutions that are failing justice.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put a call out to Senator Margie Bright Matthews, and maybe she could clear things up for us, because I'm confused
You're
right
there
now.
for that.
All right, you all. Thank you again for being on the show. Thank you for helping us tackle injustice, Dr. Cheney. John
okay.
Salati. Hit the red
Thanks,
button.
Salon.
hit the red button to subscribe. The email is in the chat on the bar below. Send your thoughts and concerns. And we hope we can get some South Carolinian attorneys to jump in on this and help tackle justice with us. You all have a great day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.
When someone goes through a divorce, they lose their best friend. They lose their house. They lose their children. Any time away from your child is a loss. Let's face it, divorce kills. The average cost in the United States for a divorce is $13,000. It's not uncommon for a divorce to cost well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. At Remus, we take into consideration you, the divorcing spouse, your property, your money, and your children. We assist clients in directing them to therapy, mentorship programs, savings. We mitigate the cost of divorce to keep your expenses down. We look out for the client holistically.
I came to Remus Law seeking a divorce. Salon listened to me. I told him my story. When he emailed me a copy of the complaint, which summarized my story, he was able to say exactly what I had been feeling for so many years. When my husband was served with the complaint, he came to me with tears in his eyes. He said he didn't know this is how I was really feeling. He asked if we could try again.
At Remus, we do all that we can for our clients.
Wait a little bit longer. Wait a little, we'll be coming around again. 'Cause you know we're stronger than we were when you and I began. I don't know what's harder, holding on or letting go. I don't know if we oughta, know if we oughta, know I know. I don't know where we're going, but I know it's gonna be good. I don't know where we're going, but I know it's gonna be good.
The lessons taught in the adventures of Uncle Billy and Ross are lessons that adults learn late in life. Some never learn it. I will recommend every parent, every young person, every adult read this book. But more importantly, apply the lessons.